Probably a really important transition that we see documented in the archaeological record of this time, in the time frame of these species, is the appearance at about 400,000 years of ballistic technology or projectiles. I don't know how well you can see, but this is a fantastically well-preserved javelin from this site of Schoningen. In fact, there are a series of throwing spears. They're basically, they have the characteristics of throwing spears that have been preserved at this site, which is busily being mined away. It's a large lignite coal mine. But these specimens are tremendous in terms of their preservation. And they clearly show that at least some of these species were engaging in the use of projectile technology. So hunting from a distance. Okay? This is probably a major breakthrough in human evolution, the ability to hunt game from a considerable distance. It really sort of represents a sort of major adaptive shift relative to the earlier fossil hominins. And just to give you a sense in time where they come, so here we have the hand axes, and here we have fire and the first evidence for projectile technology. Okay, just lastly then into the last couple of 100,000 years, the later humans. I don't know how many of you are aware of the announcement today that they've finalised the draft of the Neanderthal genome. It's just announced, obviously. Good day to announce such things. So in the American Association for the Advancement of Science, there was a paper presented today by Svante Paabo announcing the fact that a team at Leipzig have finalised the first draft of the Neanderthal genome. So that's pretty exciting, and we're looking forward to seeing what they find with that. Neanderthals were, of course, one of these species. Let's just go forward here. So we have fantastic fossil record for Neanderthals from a series of sites in Europe, also in Israel, going further east to Iraq and as far east as Uzbekistan. The early ones date from about 127,000 down to about 24,000. The earliest evidence for humans, for Homo sapiens, dates back to about 190,000 years ago, from the site of Omo Kabish in Ethiopia. We also have some wonderfully preserved specimens from the site of Hurtu in Ethiopia. Some very nice specimens from Israel, Skahul here, that dates to about 100,000. And also the site of Kafse in Israel, dating to a similar sort of time range. So here we see basically very little change relative to the early humans in terms of body size. The Neanderthals are slightly larger than us in terms of their sort of average body size and average stature. Locomotion, similar to us as far as Neanderthals are concerned. I'll just put this on for historical purposes. This is one of the early reconstructions of Neanderthals. And as you can see, they're basically reconstructed as hairy, sort of gorilla-like individuals. I think there's a club hiding in the back there somewhere. And this is a reconstruction, a painting by Jay Materns from the American Museum of Natural History from about 1990. And you can see here that there's been really quite a fundamental shift in our thinking about Neanderthals, where they're very similar to us in terms of their morphology and their lifestyle as it's portrayed here. And this is an even more recent reconstruction from the Neanderthal Museum in Germany. Relative size of the teeth and jaws, again, similar to what we see in modern humans in Neanderthals. Relative brain size, this is kind of an interesting one for anybody who hasn't encountered Neanderthals before. On average, they had bigger brains than us. Okay, so we tend to think of ourselves as being the really brainy species on the planet, and Neanderthals, on average, had larger brains than us. Okay, so that sort of should serve as something of a corrective for getting too excited about one's large cranial capacity. Development, this is where we see, basically in Neanderthals, we see fast development like modern humans. So Neanderthals are basically, in all these adaptive characteristics that I've been talking about, are basically like us. Okay, there are subtle differences, but they're basically similar to us. I thought I'd just briefly mention language, since it's something that people get very excited about as being an important development in human evolution. At the moment, I think we can say virtually nothing about the origins of language. It's a completely confused situation as far as all the different lines of evidence that have been put forward. We know that early anatomically modern humans at about 40,000, maybe somewhat earlier, were engaging in some form of sort of symbolic behaviour. We know that Neanderthals had some of the genes that seem to be linked to language. There's recent report here outlining the presence of a gene called FOXP2 in a Neanderthal. It suggested that they had some of the genetic underpinnings of language. Beyond that, we can't really say very much. This is kind of an interesting pairing. This is Philip Lieberman, who's argued very strongly for a number of years that Neanderthals couldn't speak like us, based on reconstructions of the vocal tract. And this guy is his son, Dan Lieberman, who a few years ago came along and said, actually, these reconstructions that his dad's been making, you can't actually sustain. That we can't actually reconstruct the anatomy, the characteristics, the dimensions of the vocal tract from the hard tissue morphology that we get in the fossils. So it's kind of problematic. We can't say anything about the vocal tract. And this specimen caused a lot of excitement. This is a hyoid bone from a Neanderthal from Israel, from a site called Kabara, that when it was found caused a lot of excitement because it's basically metrically indistinguishable from modern humans. Okay, so the hyoid bone is in the neck, and it basically, I don't know whether you can see it here. Oh, sorry, it's here. It basically is at the bottom end of the vocal tract. And what was argued is that, given this is like modern humans, we can then infer that basically Neanderthals had a similar vocal tract to modern humans. Unfortunately, someone came along subsequently and demonstrated actually not only is this similar to modern humans, it's very similar to a pig's in terms of its metric dimensions. So hyoids turn out not to be very useful in terms of distinguishing things that can talk and things that can't. So language is a big open question about this. Okay, last few slides. Just wanted to talk about briefly probably the most exciting fossil discovery of the last, I don't know, 50 years maybe. You've probably all heard of the Hobbit, I take it, as they're referred to now. One surprising thing about the Hobbits, the specimen that was discovered is almost certainly a female based on the reconstruction that was done. This tells us interesting things about what people have in mind, well, this in particular. How a female specimen gets reconstructed as a male is interesting and surprising. What's really surprising about these specimens, or this in particular, this one specimen, is the size of it, both in terms of body size and in particular in terms of brain size, and particularly the time at which they're appearing, at which they've been found. So the date range from these fossils, which come from this site of Flores down in Southeast Asia, is about 74,000 to 14,000. And that's very late in time for a species that there's a hominin with a brain size of about 350 cubic centimetres, so about the size of a chimpanzee in terms of brain size. So this is sort of the reason why there was so much excitement amongst paleoanthropologists, is that this is was a completely unexpected find, to have a very small-brained, small species so late in time. Okay. This is, the later end of this. The Neanderthals have already been dead for 10,000 years, or extinct for 10,000 years. So these are surviving very late. There's been an argument in the literature between people who have been arguing, Brown et al., for example, the people who discovered, have been arguing that this represents a new species, Homo floresiensis, that's basically a dwarf descendant of Homo erectus. So they get onto this island, natural selection basically reduces their body size and their brain size. Other people have come along and said, well, no, you're talking rubbish here. These are, in fact, pathological modern humans. Okay, they're just small, individuals with a condition called microcephaly. And for the last 5 years, every American Association of Physical Anthropology meeting, you can basically be guaranteed to have a dust-up between these two groups of researchers.